Hi guys, it's Ash, your truth-bombing fairy godmother for everything love, dating, and relationships. Right now, it is a very hard, difficult time in the world. It's such a hard, difficult time for so many of us. The world as a whole is in such a state of anxiety, grief, uncertainty, shared loss. And I know for me personally, there's such a heaviness that I feel that I know so many of us are feeling right now too. Therefore, I wanted to pick a topic that somewhat catered to that. During this time of stillness and forced isolation, one of the many things that can happen for people is that pain and grief from past losses can suddenly come bubbling up to the surface for our attention or further processing. I was talking to a friend who is dealing with a very fresh breakup right now, and I know for her and so many others who are in a similar position, whether or not you are dealing with a very recent breakup like her, or perhaps one that actually happened quite a while ago, this sort of forced isolation is making things especially painful and difficult to cope with because there is such a lack of distraction available. However, as difficult and as challenging as that might be in the short term, what this type of forced quietness can also do is foster an environment for profound growth, and therefore the ability to move through grief and the loss of an ex in an extremely productive way. I'm going to be going through some really fantastic journal questions which I found on the Rising Woman Instagram account, which can really help facilitate this process and help us to use this opportunity of stillness to really look inwards and rely on our own wisdom in order to healthfully move through a breakup. But first, before diving into all of that, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button below. I say this every single week, but that type of engagement and interaction really does make a huge difference, and it does help me out a ton. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for new love, dating, and relationship videos every single week. Okay, so breakups. Breakups, in my opinion, are one of the hardest, most painful things a person can experience. They are such a devastating loss. And I think back to my own breakups and I recall that physical ache and that sick feeling so vividly. I remember when my second boyfriend broke up with me, the worst part of my day was waking up in the morning and having to realize over and over and over again, yep, that really just happened. He really did dump me. We really aren't together anymore. And I just remember feeling that drop in my stomach every time I had to face that reality. But fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I had the luxury or the option of at least being able to distract myself. I was at university at the time, living my life. I was living on campus in dorms. I was surrounded by friends. I was able to take full advantage of all of the vices and distractions that being a young, free, single college girl in Long Beach, California had to offer, and boy, did I take full advantage. I will say that looking back, those were some of the funnest times of my whole life, but although they were so much fun, they were not healthy or productive in any way, and ultimately just ended up prolonging my pain. Instead of allowing myself to grieve and really feel the pain of that loss, I made the choice to dive straight into complete avoidance. I completely cut off all contact with him. I, blocked him on everything. I deleted every shred of evidence that we were ever together. I reinvented myself in an entirely new social circle at my college campus. I partied my ass off. I did a lot of drugs. I drank. And most importantly, I just never admitted to my sadness. I cried the night that he dumped me, and I literally never spoke about it again. to anyone. I told everyone else I was doing great. I told myself I was doing great. I made it my mission to really hammer that message into my head. But the truth was that I was so epically humiliated and embarrassed by that breakup and the way that it happened, that my ego did its best to really shield me from having to feel that and having to acknowledge that to myself. And unfortunately, although it made coping with my pain a little bit easier at the time, pain doesn't go away that easily. It embeds itself and ingrains itself so deeply within you, and it waits until your world is still and quiet, until erupting back up into your consciousness, demanding the attention and the compassion and the love that you've failed to give it for so long. Which leads me to my first point. Pain must be felt. It must and it will be felt and heard eventually. You can numb yourself and distract yourself all you want, but eventually, at some point, it will come back to bite you in the ass if you didn't allow yourself the time to grieve and process it and feel it when you should have. Allowing yourself to feel all of the feels and being courageous and vulnerable enough to admit to yourself and your loved ones that you're hurting is so important. It's one of the most simple yet most powerful ways to really honor yourself and your experience. But unfortunately, a lot of people, especially people like me with a really strong ego, find that so difficult to do. Forcing yourself to feel or be or act okay when you're really not is such a huge disservice and betrayal to yourself. And I wish I had had the emotional maturity and awareness to understand that at the time. Allowing yourself to grieve and really showing up for yourself in that way is, in my opinion, the single most important part of moving through the loss of a relationship or the loss of anything, really. So what this experience of stillness and isolation that the world is currently going through uniquely offers us who perhaps are grieving the loss of a relationship is simply a lack of distraction, which, although confronting and scary in the moment, it also fosters an environment with a lot less vices and distractions that would otherwise encourage us to avoid honoring our grief and our pain. It demands our pain to be more readily felt, which is such a rare but fantastic opportunity that we will likely never get again. Hopefully never get again. We can't surround ourselves with new and exciting people. We don't have the option to jump straight into a new relationship or start dating again. We can't go to parties or go out or go to clubs. We can't travel, which has been a huge vice for me to distract myself from pain, simply picking up and relocating somewhere new. That's not an option for any of us, so say bye-bye to holidays and vacations for the time being. We just don't have our usual luxuries or ways to cope. We have no choice but to sit down and face ourselves, which is something that all of us eventually have to do after a breakup. We have to be willing to sit with our pain eventually, at some point. And there is no time like the present, especially now with what's going on. We have to be willing to sit with our pain and give it the love and the attention and the compassion that it needs, that we need, because moving through is the only effective way out. Traveling, attention from new people, validation from new people may be really fun distractors, short-term distractors, but that is all they are. They are not healers of pain. So, with this unique opportunity of being cooped up at home with nothing else but ourselves and our grief and our pain, I wanted to share these absolutely fantastic journal questions that I found on the Rising Woman Instagram page, and I will link that down below to make it clear. Again, these are not my own, but they are so profoundly insightful that I just had to share with you guys, and there was just no way in hell that I could have thought of any better questions myself, so I'm not even going to try. I wish so much that I had asked myself these types of questions back when I was dealing with my own breakups, and not only that, I wish that journaling was a tool that I had utilized as well. Journaling is so powerful, you guys. So powerful. Learning how to really harness your own wisdom and guidance and knowing how to become your own life raft is one of the most wonderful gifts that you can give yourself. And it's also one of the most powerful ways to move through painful experiences in a productive way. So without further delay, here are 7 incredibly powerful questions that you can ask yourself that can help you move through a breakup or the loss of an ex in an incredibly sincere, constructive way. Number 1, what is the unmet need I want this person to meet? Validation, comfort, love, safety, just to name a few examples. Number 2, if I were to look at this person as a solution to my problem, what solution would they be offering? Soothing anxiety, making me feel safe, providing comfort, love, or approval that I am worthy. Bingo! That last one, the love or approval that I am worthy, was such a big one for me personally. Like I said previously, I was so humiliated and embarrassed by my breakup with my ex because the way that he dumped me really reiterated how unworthy I felt. And as a result, I really latched onto him and people like him because winning them over was my way of proving to myself that I was in fact worthy and that I was enough. We talked about this a ton in my video last week, so please check that one out up here if you haven't already done so. But had I had asked myself a question like this back then, I could have gained the insight and self-awareness to really recognize this unmet, unfulfilled need within myself, and then been able to replace it with behaviors that really honored my inherent worth instead. Number 3, who from my first family system does this person remind me of in their behavior, style of communication, or coping strategies? We often unconsciously seek partners who mirror difficult family relationships simply because it's what feels most familiar to us. So being able to identify this and recognize this is important because it can really interrupt that pattern of just being mindlessly attracted or pulled towards people who mimic difficult family relationships. Number 4, if I'm being radically honest with myself, what fears or insecurities are coming up in me? Too much, not enough, I'll be alone forever, etc., etc. Like I said, feel that pain. Feeling the pain and then further being able to name it is so important because once you can name the pain, you can really get underneath it and see if there's any types of false beliefs or negative internal dialogue that is perhaps perpetuating that pain even further. Number 5, how can I begin to meet this internal need in another way without relying on this person? Number 6, the next time I'm feeling triggered or anxious, who can I call instead of my ex? Number 7, and this one is so incredibly relevant for this current social distancing and self-isolation that we're all dealing with at the moment. The next time I'm feeling triggered or anxious and no one is around, how can I self-soothe? again, this current situation that we're all in right now is a fantastic opportunity to learn how to self-soothe. And journaling in itself is certainly one of the many ways that we can self-soothe, because it teaches us how to rely on our own wisdom for answers and reassurance and validation instead of relying on it from others. So for those of us who are either experiencing a very recent breakup, or perhaps one that actually happened quite a while ago, but you maybe didn't healthfully or productively sit with that pain or grieve that loss at the time, and therefore find it bubbling up to the surface now during this time of quietness and stillness and isolation, why not utilize this time to practice such a valuable skill? Within all of us is such a profoundly wise, loving adult energy, and journaling is one of the many ways that we can connect with that part of ourselves. And I think that is a key part of moving on from an ex-partner in a truly productive way. All right, lovelies. Well, that's pretty much it for today. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and specifically, I would love to know if journaling is something that you've utilized in your own life, and any other journal questions that you've maybe found particularly productive, or that have helped you connect with that deeper, wiser part of yourself, and how it's perhaps helped you move through your own painful experiences or your own losses in life. Because I know that right now, loss is such a common theme for so many of us, not simply just due to the loss of relationships, but loss of all kinds of things as a result of this horrific pandemic. So please comment down below if you're up to sharing. I would love to connect with you as much as possible, especially during a time like this. So if you're open to chatting, as always, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Until next week, hang in there. See you next time.